Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on dyslexia, spotting the signs. My name is Andy Rigby. I'm the Regional Manager for the North for Posturite. I'm joined today by my colleagues Howard Chambers, our Enablement Consultant, and Ellie Hale, who is our WorkRight Business Software Business Development Manager. So with the subject in mind, I think dyslexia is a conversation we're having more and more with our clients. But we're also having conversations with clients who tell us that they don't really see dyslexia in their workplace, where, of course, the stats show that 10% of the UK population do have dyslexia in some form. So there's obviously a bit of work to be done to recognise a few of these signs and ensure that the individuals are productive in their job role and happy in their place of work. Whilst we regularly see people with musculoskeletal issues, of course, doing what we do, it's somewhat easier to detect someone with a bit of discomfort at the workstation. It's not, of course, easy to spot people with dyslexic tendencies, which is the basis of the webinar today. Howard's going to go through this in the next few seconds, and then I'm going to hand over at the back end of the presentation to my colleague Ellie Hale, who will briefly discuss an online dyslexia screener, which we've had quite a lot of queries on the back of the webinar invitation. There is options to send through questions, so please send them through the system, and then we will field all the questions at the end. So I will hand over to Howard.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. Just so you're aware, the slides are going to go through are a series of a bigger presentation, so really what you're seeing here is a bit of a taster, and we're more than happy to come out and do sessions for you and your teams, just so you can actually have an in-house feel for how the type of issues affect you. So without further ado, let's have a look. So this is what we're going to go through. Look at some of the myths around dyslexia and what the definitions are. A quick look at the strengths and weaknesses of a dyslexic, what accommodations are currently out there, and perhaps more importantly then, how you manage a team member who has dyslexia or you feel has dyslexia. And we'll talk a little bit around assistive technology. Now, once again, in the bigger presentation, I actually demonstrate this. It's my actual strength. I'm an assistive technology teacher as well. Okay, so some of the myths around dyslexia. As we see here, people believe that having dyslexia means you can't write in a professional manner, which is, once again, it's completely wrong. I was with a girl the other day from Ofsted who writes the most beautiful reports. She had other issues, but her actual writing is perfect. People think that there's some reflection on mental intelligence, and once again, it's completely out of the ballpark. In anything, it's probably the other way around. People think that every dyslexic is poor at reading and grammar. Once again, I meet dyslexics who read and read and read, are avid readers, and the punctuality is fantastic as well. So once again, that's not necessarily an issue. People think that dyslexics want to be treated differently, which once again is just not the case. People really want to be treated the same with just some sort of minor accommodations. Sometimes people think lack of contribution at work is because people are not interested, and it's often because they don't want to butt into a meeting conversation because they lose the train of thought. So bear that in mind as we go through this presentation. People believe that all dyslexics are clumsy and ham-fisted, and although that is a trait by some, it's certainly not by all. We also hear that costly technical accommodations are required, which, once again, I was talking earlier, often that could be just a place of where they sat or literally giving a dyslexic a little bit more time. And that accommodations will slow down or disrupt colleagues. Actually, the opposite is true. Often the accommodations will help everybody, not just the dyslexics. Okay, so the dyslexia definition is here, a specific learning difficulty that primarily affects the ability to learn to read and spell. And as Andy mentioned, upwards 10% of the population are affected. So we're going to look at some of the common traits within dyslexia. These are a whole list of different things that a dyslexic colleague may have. See if you can spot any of these as we go through them. So things like the language issues, the reading, the writing, actual getting information down on the page can be issues. phonological problems, that's the ability to identify and manipulate the sounds of language. Visual sensitivity, so if you have people who struggle with things like lighting or being able to see certain text on certain colour backgrounds. Short-term memory is certainly an issue, and I would say perhaps the most common one as I go around and see dyslexics in my assessment. Often dyslexics requires longer processing time. They take longer to read documentation through, they take longer to process what the information needs. And dyslexics often have this variation between good and bad days. Many suffer with low self-esteem and poor concept of time, often being late, always being on the last minute. Organisational problems, unable to put things in a logical order, and can often seem demotivated. I come across this a lot, not just with dyslexia, but also many of the other disabilities that I come across. It is an issue, and it is something to try and spot if you can. Often they struggle with lists of long tasks. I've seen this a lot where the information is given out in bulk, and then the dyslexic just feels overwhelmed by the whole thing of it. So we'll go around how to perhaps address that. And once again, another popular one here is that they can be poor at prioritising work. So amount of work is there, they struggle to actually pinpoint which bits need to be done first. So those are traditionally what we think about the weaknesses of a dyslexic. But then we look at the actual strengths, and there are twice as many strengths that dyslexics have than weaknesses. And you'll often find people who build, architects for instance, a lot of those guys can visualize in 3D. They're able to create pictures in their own mind. They have a different way of thinking. Often inquisitive, they'll ask the questions other people won't ask. And once again, they can make this concept, but this connection between concepts. They take information from various sources, which means it's not just one area, being able to read or listen. They can actually, pick up that information from lots of other areas. And often the dyslexics are lateral thinkers. Perhaps back to the inquisitive part, they're often critical thinking skills. They have advanced critical thinking skills, and tend to be good problem solvers. Tend to be have good visual spatial skills, and they can recognize patterns in information. And then some of the softer skills, they're empathetic, they're caring, they're open and aware, and they use memory techniques to put things into their own memory. Often have advanced verbal skills. I come across this a lot. Dyslexics tend to be very verbose, can talk for England, they really can talk a lot, but they struggle actually getting that information down onto paper. Other traits here are being generous, enthusiastic and persistent, and this need to achieve. Once again, a common trait that comes through with dyslexics I find is this need to achieve. Often resilient, which often comes from the time at school where they've often been put back. They've been told they can't do something, they're unable to do this because of their state, and people are very hard working. Often dyslexics are musical, not in all cases, and often spontaneous. Many dyslexics are artistic, many once again are good at practical skills. And many employ what they call a rich colour memory. Colour means a lot more to them in their own mind. They can use certain colours to recognise certain things, whether that be computerised or be able to recognise those things in life. In England, we have it the wrong way around. Over in America, dyslexia is classed as a gift. They will purposely go out and actually look for people with dyslexia. Because once again, from the strength we've just seen, there are a lot more things that are good about dyslexic than are classed as a weakness. Okay, so what types of things can help? We'll go through these, but like I said, we can spend a lot more time if we actually come in and see you. But things like difficulty with reading and with reading. If we look at giving verbal as well as written instructions, if we highlight any salient points within documents, often works well. And if somebody is in meetings, it's worth considering recording that minutes So actually either using a thing called a live scribe pen, which is a recording pen, or even a simple handheld recorder. We'll talk a little more about screen reading software, but there are many on the market, and a great proofreading tool. Some dyslexics can use the use of a scanner. So basically, put a scanner, you put a piece of paper through a scanner that will then read back through screen reading software. And once again, some dyslexics, not all, prefer their information coming through on different coloured paper. Magenta, rose are two of the ones that are quite useful. But that can be done on a computer as well. There are the programs now where we can actually set the background colour to be magenta, rose, blue, yellow, green, whatever it is. Basically taking that shine off the whiteness of the paper. You're actually putting a softer background colour, which often helps. Spelling and grammar, once again, there's a product here called Text Help that we provide, which will read text back to you, but actually then there's an enhanced spell checker within there as well, which is really quite nice. Allow more time to proofread work. I get this a lot with dyslexics. They say that they just haven't got the time to be able to finish a piece of work and then put it out. Often this piece of work is going into senior managers or even out to the public, and it's going out with spelling mistakes and grammatical errors. Really is quite keen that we give enough time, and maybe using the Text Help product can help with that as well. Another nice little product for you to have a look at is one called Global Autocorrect, and basically it's a spell checker that sits in the background of your system and will, as it does on the tin, it will actually auto-correct any spelling mistakes that you get wrong, not just in Word, but across the board. So whether that's in Internet or in Excel, it will auto-correct any words that you get wrong. And a simple solution to companies that don't have inbuilt spell checkers in their systems, and you should really have if you can, is to use things like Google. Okay, onto the verbal communications. Try and give verbal instructions one at a time and make sure they understand that quite clearly and slowly so they can actually get the information across. If need be, make sure that information is written down so they've actually got that second buffer for how that information is for what the information has been told. Try and make sure they take notes, make sure they check them. Give clear and concise instructions and ask them to repeat it back to you so you know they have full understanding. Looking at the time and the work planning, try and make sure the workplace is as quiet and away from distractions. Not always easy, I know that, but sitting somebody next to a busy entrance or next to a photocopier, for instance, can be an issue. If you can and you have office space that is available, then try and allocate some of that, certainly for parts of the day where maybe they need to have that particular concentration levels. Try and encourage co-workers not to disturb unless necessary. If you disrupt a dyslexic in mid-flow, it really can throw them out of line. It can throw them out of line for the rest of the day. It really is quite an issue. So if you do interrupt them, make sure that you allow the user to pause, write down the information, they can actually resume where they are. Okay, talking briefly now about how to manage a team member with dyslexia, or you may think have a problem with dyslexia. I think the first thing is part of what we're doing today is to have an understanding of dyslexia and what impact it has at work. I would certainly sit down and talk privately with them about your concerns, and you may need within that to adapt your communication skills. You may come across quite blunt to some dyslexics in that way, so really try and make sure you're empathetic in that. Try and build on positive working relationships. If it's somebody you've known well and suddenly started the work's dropping off, it's for a reason. That there's something behind that. Often I find it's things like promotion. Often it's a change of the job structure and the way they're doing things. So if you know them well enough, build on those strengths to try and to understand what those problems are. One of the options here, if you suspect that somebody has dyslexia, is to have one of our workplace needs assessments. We can talk quite at length about that, but basically that's an assessment where an assessor will come out, do a one-to-one session with the client, and out of the back of that will come quite a detailed report on the accommodations that can help for that particular user. And everyone is different. I've done hundreds, and I've never crossed anybody that has the same issues. And quite importantly, make sure you give feedback and set the boundaries for where you're going to go forward. So if you are going to give somebody extra time, make sure that's documented. Make sure they understand that they're given a bit of extra time to proofread the notes, to actually do a piece of work outside of the colleagues. Okay, these are some of the assistive technologies that we're currently using. I mentioned a text help read and write. Basically, it's an enhanced spell checker. It will proofread work, and it's also got color changes, so you can actually change the colors of the background of the screen. Dragon, naturally speaking, is voice-to-text software. It's probably the voice-to-text software on the market at the moment. You'll have seen the adverts where a guy jumps out of the plane and does the dictation to his secretary. The product is fantastic, really, really good. It allows a dyslexic to put information down on a piece of paper where they may struggle actually putting it through a keyboard. A really nice bit of kit, not for everybody, and it does come with certain limitations in big open plan offices and certain call centers, so just be aware that it's not the panacea for every dyslexic, but a fantastic tool for somebody who needs to dictate quite large amounts of notes. I already mentioned the global autocorrect, and that's, like I say, sits in the background, and a live scribe pen, quite new on the market. These are a pen that actually records information into a book, but actually then takes an audio recording of a meeting as well. So a dyslexic could go back, they can actually have the words transcribed from their book into a data document, but they've also then got the backup that's covered by audio as well. So quite a nice bit of kit, and certainly well worth a look at if you want to get us guys out to show you. Okay, so just to round up my piece, it's been very quick there, but hopefully you've got some information out of that. So there are many signs to look out for. Nobody's the same, so you may have dyslexic within the team who are completely different, and I find that wherever I go. So don't think a dyslexic is always going to be the same. Dyslexic can bring along something different. Part of team building exercise these days, often we'll try and find dyslexics because they often are the ones who can think very differently. They're the ones who can have the ideas, and you've only got to mention people like Richard Branson and the like to understand, you know, a very severe dyslexic can actually do very, very well in business because they have a different way of approaching things. Sometimes all it requires is a little more time. You know, just allowing that person a little bit more time just to proofread the work, to understand that it takes them maybe, you know, a couple of minutes longer to digest an email. Technology can help for some dyslexics, but not all, and I certainly wouldn't say that has to be one of the things you have to have. Some people are happy just with more time, the way they sit, the way that the colleagues talk to them or approach them. And I think that perhaps the most important thing, dyslexia should not be a barrier to success. I come across so many dyslexics who are high flyers in the business. They just need a little extra something, whatever it is, to actually move on to the next level. So please never think just because you have a dyslexic in your organization, that's going to be a problem for them. Often they can be, like I said, be a real high flyer and move on very quickly. Okay. So that's been very quickly from my perspective, 20 minutes. I hope that's been of use for you, and I'll pass you back over to Andy now, if that's okay.
Yeah, great, thanks, Howard. Yeah, I'll pass you on to Ellie in a few seconds, just with regards to speak about the screener. But just to remind you, if you want to send some questions through whilst we've got a bit of time, if you send some questions through just via the system, it will come through to me, and then I can field them to Howard or to Ellie once Ellie's finished speaking about the screener. So yeah, any questions, fire them through now, and yeah, I'll hand over to Ellie.
Oh, Brill. Thank you. Cheers for that, Howard and Andy. I just wanted to let you guys know that as Workwrite, our software division, we have developed a really simple online dyslexia screener that you can get your staff to complete. It only takes a few minutes, and it can be done at any location. The screener that we have focuses on 6 key areas and will immediately generate a report upon completion of the screener, and will just help you to understand whether there are any problems that your staff might be having are caused by dyslexia. It can give you an overview of your employees' strengths and weaknesses, and it's just a great tool for evaluating where your employee might be best focused on in the future. So it's going to show any dyslexic tendencies that your staff might have, to then allow you to refer your employee for a full diagnostic assessment or disability workplace needs assessment to see if there's anything else you can do to help. So if that might be of interest, you can contact our Work Right support team or your account managers, and we can give you more information on that and how you get it. That's it for me, guys. No worries.
Yeah, brilliant. If anyone's got more queries with regard to the online screener, or the best thing to do, it's very difficult for us to show you via the webinar because it's obviously very specific to the individual. But the best thing to do is to set up a trial link for you, so you can actually complete the screener yourself.
We can send you guys links to a webinar that we did last year actually on it as well, which takes you through the whole screener and the key factors.
Great. A couple of questions. This one will be for Howard, if that's okay. Is dyslexia similar to dyspraxia in terms of adjustments?
They are two different things actually, but often have the similar type of traits. So dyspraxics often struggle more to do with the physicality side of things. Clumsy, hand-fisted comes to mind. Things like catching balls at school often would have been an issue. But yeah, a lot of the actual weaknesses tend to be the same. They tend to have, you would go into an assessment with the same sort of criteria for looking at the types of issues they have, yes.
Great. And there's a further question. The list of indicators of dyslexia suggests that individuals may have dyslexia and may not be aware. How likely is this?
I would say quite likely. I come across quite a few at the moment who have only been diagnosed in the last few years. If they're at a certain age where they would have missed being checked at school, certainly anybody in the 40s, 50s probably, often they've only been diagnosed very recently. What actually happens is people develop their own coping strategies and they manage with that, and that could be as simple as asking a colleague to read things out for them, or they bluff their way through things. Often what comes to light is when they get promoted or the job role changes, they're having to do more reports, for instance. That's when the coping strategies suddenly fall to pieces, and that's when they themselves understand that there may be an issue.
Great. And another question, is it necessary to obtain a full psychological assessment?
I wouldn't say a full psychological assessment. What we do as part of the workplace needs assessment is to come out and visit the client within their own workspace. That tends to be two-part. One we will do in a meeting office, so they can sort of let you know where they feel that their issues are, and then we'll often then go back to their own workspace just to make sure that we cover that as well. So no, not necessarily just to have a full psychological assessment.
Great. Yeah, that does complete the questions that have come through. There's been 2 or 3 that have just been very specific about assessments and the sort of assessments that we do. It may be a conversation that we have with you individually just to see what the need is. So yeah, if there are queries on anything that the presentation's gone through, we will. There's been a question said, will the slides be available? We will send the presentation through to you, and then if there's any queries on the back of that, just reply to those in the email that does come through, and then we can field those queries to the relevant person. So yeah, the presentation will be sent through. A couple of people have asked that. And it will also be uploaded onto our website as well over the next few working days. So if there's anyone else in your organisation that wants to feel that this is relevant for, you can forward that on. So we will send that through to you. Yeah, just double checking. There's no more questions that have come through. That's great. Yeah, as I say, any queries do come back to us. But yeah, thank you very much for your attendance this afternoon. I hope it is of some use. Yeah, no doubt we will, through the account manager deal with or ourselves, no doubt we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.